and welcome to the Big 12. Welcome to Go Big 12 or Go Home. I'm Brandon Shanahan here with Drew Russell. Lots of great football around the country, specifically around the Big 12. Now to get started here, I also kind of want to look at the Big 12 as a whole. Lots of great games gone on in last week, like we already mentioned, but I kind of want to take a look at where the conference is going to be. Like just as a whole, now that we've gotten to see these two teams, see these game see these teams play twice, have an opportunity to bounce back if they stunk in week one, an opportunity to keep that momentum rolling in week two if they had success. So I brought up this little tier maker graphic here that I'll kind of tinker with, kind of see how we feel about these teams. And so at the top tier for me, just to get us started, I kind of think that Texas belongs in their own tier at this point. Going into Tuscaloosa, beating up that great Alabama team on the road. I haven't seen anything from any of these other Big 12 teams that can even kind of compare to that.
You know, and they've got the most high-profile win right now. So, I can't disagree that they are a playoff contender. I still am tempted to put Kansas State there. We haven't discussed their game at all. And I know they haven't played any big names through the first 2 weeks, but they took care of a solid Troy program this week. I mean, it was not a close game whatsoever. Will Howard is playing great football. That defense looks pretty filthy. They're on that tier. I won't put them in playoff contender yet. I'll agree with you. But they are somebody to keep an eye on. But yeah, Texas clearly, they've definitely solidified themselves a playoff contender. And hey, shout out to the top five this week of the AP poll. Every Power 5 conference has at least one team in it. So in an era where it feels like conferences have been, kind of stacking up and way better than others. And yeah, on paper they have the last few years. Been kind of an interesting year that it seems more even across the board, especially on that top half.
I think so too, and I think that's when college football is at its best. But you see teams like Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State have to reload a quarterback, reload a lot of talent they've just been sitting on for the past 2 or 3 seasons. And that gives opportunities like these Pac-12 teams who have just been grinding and building up their programs, or Texas, bringing back 10 stars on offense. I think it's great for college football. But you mentioned Kansas State. I think you're absolutely right. They're right there in that second tier. Do I think they can win the conference? Absolutely. But do I think that they are among that top tier of true national title contenders? Not quite. But you're right. As far as that second tier in the Big 12, I definitely think that they're leading the way. And if I had to pick, a matchup right now in Arlington, it's these two teams right here.
Definitely on paper, it would be one that would make sense. And there's, it's a fascinating conference because you look at the dark horses in general, and whether you like it or not, I mean, Oklahoma looks a lot better, at least for 2 weeks, especially on the defensive side of the football. SMU, really, they were just able to do whatever they wanted defensively in that football game. Also want to give a shout out to the broadcast team on that game. We had the great, one of our former coworkers, Sean Kenny, outstanding broadcast with the great Ryan Leaf on that broadcast. So just want to give a shout out there. But OU looked really good. And Dylan Gabriel looks a little more comfortable. So I put them as a dark horse as well. And you got to give kind of a tip a hat to it in terms of what they're able to do in that game. And I'm going to throw a third one out there, Brandon. You might think you might not put it on there, but for me personally, I really liked what Kansas did against Illinois on Friday night. And I'm not saying they're kind of on that line of that dark horse are fine, but give them credit where it's due. They really took it to Illinois, a team that was viewed as solid coming into the season. Maybe I say Brett Bielema is a bit of a fraud, but give them credit where it's due. Jalen Daniels looked great. Their offense is really a nice unit, so kudos there.
Kansas is pretty tricky.
Yeah.
Because their offense it might be the best in the conference. And Texas is tough. They can put up points, but Kansas might be right there with them. As far as competing at the top end of the conference in a way that I think Oklahoma and Kansas State can, I don't know if I'm quite there yet. I do think I do think we got to make another tier for teams like Kansas, because I think Kansas is a really good Big 12 team, and I think that there's a couple other teams that could, if the chips fall their way, get to Arlington. I think Kansas is absolutely one of them. I think there's a lot of
Yeah,
teams that really don't have a whole lot of a pathway that we'll talk about here, but I don't think Kansas is that far off. And hey, if they can pick up a win against Oklahoma or Kansas State or Texas, like they've dominated that series over recent memory, I
hmm
think that I would be able to give them more of the benefit of the doubt.
I would agree with that. No, and I would. And to say they're a dark horse right now, I admittingly might have been just drinking that blue Kool-Aid uh, for one night, but definitely a team that I think can continue to do some potentially damage in general. So, I mean, they looked really good on Friday night. And for a game that a lot of people thought this was a statement game, they were able to make a statement. And I will say, I do have one complaint about the current college football system. If I'm a college football team, I'd never want to schedule a game on a Friday night. That's high school football. Many college football fans are out at their local high school team watching on Friday night. I get it's a moneymaker. I get a lot of people watch, and I caught even a little bit on Friday, but I personally don't think it's good for programs to put a game on Friday night when there's, if most of the recruits are out playing, they can't watch the game live. So I personally am not a fan, but hey, if they feel it gets the program more exposure, then so be it.
And that's kind of how I would sell that. I think overall, you bring up a lot of good points there. If I were to play devil's advocate, I would say having a standalone primetime game, especially a game against like Illinois, where that's just going to get lost in the shuffle. That's probably looking like an ESPN Plus or FS1 game at best. So now you get a primetime slot on a network. I think just bringing those eyeballs every once in a while, and we see the MAC conference do it as well. Take advantage of some of those earlier slots in the week, Tuesday, Wednesday games. Um, I don't mind it. It does kind of damper a little bit because it does kind of have that. I don't know, not quite. There's something about like a college football morning or a college football afternoon thing that I think you lose with that. I think is special, but I think those eyeballs are very valuable, especially
Mhm.
like a team up and coming like Kansas. And you show,
Mhm.
they're not going to have that many. Fox Noon kickoff might not leave Boulder this year, to be honest. But
That's
um,
true. Yeah.
like, did you see they're going back there again? They don't even have the Colorado game. They're promoting the ESPN game the whole time.
Isn't that amazing?
Outstanding stuff. And Penn State, Illinois, it's going to be a good game. I
It
think
will be. It will be.
probably
No
not,
question.
but
No, we'll say it is. Why not?
now now that I
Why
think
not?
about it, but I
No,
mean,
Penn State. Who? I mean, nothing gets me more hyped than Brett Bielema versus James Franklin. If there's something
outstanding
that just
stuff.
makes me go nuts, it's. I always wonder how many hot dogs Brett Bielema could eat on the sideline if they just let him go.
Absolute. Oh man, what a beast!
Yeah, he would have. I guarantee of all college football coaches, Brett's a top three if they did competitive eating. Top three.
Top three. Yeah, it's tough to think of anybody else who can kind of keep up with them. He's an animal.
Oh yeah, he is. But I'll tell you what, I bet there's some sick minds out there that could find a way to hammer down a few. I like to think Sonny Dykes at TCU could hammer down some hot dogs. Who is feeling it?
Yeah, it would be a very unpleasant watch for sure. But I think that he's just a gritty guy. Speaking of
Yes.
Sonny Dykes, I would also put them on this tier here. My big analysis coming into this year is that we'll see the floor for TCU and Sonny Dykes.
Mhm.
Whatever they do here should be kind of the bottom line
Yeah.
expectations. They have a lot of spots to fill, lots of continuity that they got to work on throughout the rest of their early season. But I think that I think they could absolutely steal a game against Texas. I think they could absolutely steal a
Yep.
game against Kansas State and Oklahoma, and kind of be in that spot, week 10, week 11, week 12, where you're in the race to Arlington.
Yep.
Um, and I think that especially as Chandler Morris gets more comfortable and more um, dialed in, I think they're absolutely up there.
Yep. They're going to be interesting just because, again, they get socked week one, but they play a lot better week two. That game against Houston, I think is just going to be really interesting because on paper they should take care of business, but Houston can find a way. That's their Big 12 opener, and that their stadium is going to be have some juice in there. So it'll be a tough test for TCU.
Yeah, I think a great opportunity to really kind of show a little bit more balance of, well, our offense is as good as it looked against Colorado, but our defense can be a little bit closer to what you saw last week, and really kind of put together and really kind of flex a little bit. You know, we have a lot of stinkers for games this year, not a whole lot of conference games. A lot of teams trying to get another tune-up in, but TCU an opportunity to get a conference win in their belt early and kind of show like, hey, that Colorado's also very good. So let's not rip on TCU too bad here. I still think that they're a good team.
They are, and and looking kind of at those the rest of the way. I mean, those other 9. I don't know on paper who can legitimately get to kind of Arlington going forward because 2 of the teams in that upper half of the preseason rankings are 0-2 in Texas Tech and Baylor, and they both had expectations coming in. That said, though, you look at those teams, do you see either one of them? I mean, again, conference record 0-0. They could go undefeated or go 8-1, and congratulations, you're going to be playing for a conference game. So that's not even remotely dead. But do you see either one of those teams finding a way to do that?
If I had to put one more team on this tier, I think it would be Texas Tech.
Yeah.
Granted that first game against Wyoming is a bit disappointing, but you got to look at it that it's a late night game in Laramie. Weather became an issue, and when you just that's a tough team to play at on the road. And as much as I think that they needed to win that game, I also thought they looked really good against Oregon, and I thought that we kind of saw what this Jerry Maguire team can look like. When I went through my Big 12 projections, Texas Tech was right there. In fact, at the end of the season, I had Texas in the Big 12 championship. Then I had Kansas State, Texas Tech, and I think there was a third team tied with like 2 losses. And I couldn't figure out a way to I couldn't figure out the Big 12 tiebreakers in that sense. So then I ended up going and giving Kansas State another win to get them in the Big 12 title game to even that up. But I haven't seen too much from Texas Tech to prove that they're not that team and that they're, certainly capable of competing with teams like Kansas State. And, I don't know if they're kind of looking at a Big 12 title championship game win or if, but I think they're a real threat for Arlington for sure. So I would put them on there unless you had any major objections about the
Nope, you're not going to hear it from me. They have good QB play in Tyler Shaw, so and their defense going to have to make a few more plays, but they hung in there against Bo Nix in Oregon. I thought they did some positive stuff, not perfect, but they did some decent things. So.
And then to get started with the good, not great tier here, I don't think these teams have an opportunity to really compete for a Big 12 title game or even really get into Arlington. I think they'll be out of that race pretty quickly. But teams that are going to make bowl games and teams that I think could give some of these teams some troubles, like we talked about earlier this week, fantastic depth throughout this conference.
It is, and sorry, Brandon, not to cut you off, but I mean, like number 1 on this list, and the reason I'm down a game to you right now, let's give those Bearcats some love. Cincinnati, a game we haven't dove into yet. I mean, really nice win at Pittsburgh, a team that has won the ACC title very recently, just a couple of years ago, and for them to go in there and find a way to get it done, give them credit. They looked a lot better than I thought they would. Their defense was outstanding, and Pitt did not look comfortable offensively for the majority of the game. And then they had great ground game throughout the day as well, averaging as a team 5 yards a carry. So give them credit. I think they're, for me, a very easy pick for that good but not great. I don't know if they're making a Big 12 title game, but a team that definitely has impressed me the first 2 weeks.
And that's exactly my thoughts. I thought that was low-key a big game here with the new coach can you still compete on the Power Five level? We saw them dominate the Group of Five over the last couple of years. That really talented team that made the playoff just a couple of years ago, but you lose all those players, you lose Luke Fickell. Can you still bounce back? And of course, once this conference season gets underway, we'll get a better gauge on that. But I think that was a big win. And I think Pittsburgh's a good team. I think a lot of folks are expecting them to win 8-9 games this year, um, going on the road and just looking composed. They didn't get great numbers from Emory Jones, just 125 yards, but efficient, 2 touchdowns, found a way to find Pater. Corey Kinner, 153 yards on the ground, really took control of the tempo of that game. So I'm really impressed with them. Yeah, I think that they're definitely the highlight of this next tier, and I think that the team that's also right there with them. A very big if as far as quarterback health goes would be their AAC foe in Central Florida, the
Yep.
Golden Knights. I thought that they've looked good. John Reese Plumlee, before he got hurt, he looked great. I had someone in my TikTok comments say he's going to win the Heisman. I think that's crazy, but I love the enthusiasm, and I just these two teams feel like if things don't go great, they could sit at 5-7 or 6-6. But if they win some games and UCF will get that underway here this week against defending Big 12 champs Kansas State, we'll pick that game here shortly. I think that they've looked good so far.
Yeah, give Central Florida, give them a lot of credit. Down late in the game, go 50 plus yards and kind of a 2-minute drill. And Colton Boomer, he had a boomer to end the game, a 40-yard dart to end Boise State's home opener and chances of winning that. Yeah, Central Florida, give them credit. That Gustavo Malzahn, I mean, he's finding a way to get things done 2-0. And you're dead right. Again, it just a team that I don't know what you're going to get. They're the highest picked team of those 4 new members coming in this year in the Big 12, with it being picked 8th. And give them credit. They've been able to dominate week 1, and then week 2, find a way to get a victory against maybe not a Boise State team that's as good as past Boise State teams, but you make a trip like that and find a way to win is going to always feel good no matter what. So great win for Central Florida.
Now, a lot of teams up here that I could absolutely put in both tiers here. So I'll default over to you. Which one of these teams do you think is the next team right around bowl eligibility, and could sneak up and give one of these upper teams some fits?
Well, you're giving me like nuclear codes, Brandon. You just have to be careful. You've given them to me, so look out. So, to good, not great, I'm going to put BYU in good, not great. And actually, their matchup this week, I'll be definitely watching. They're at Arkansas this week. And I mean, that'll be an interesting game for them because they were pretty competitive in it last year, just couldn't find a way to get it done at home. But if they find a way to win that game, that team's going bowling. I think then that tells me they can definitely win 3 conference games and take care of that. And their defense has been good so far through 2 weeks. So for me, BYU is somebody that I think has that opportunity to go bowling for sure.
Agreed, and I don't have any issue with that. Their defense has looked good. Their offense has gotten out of the gate slowly, but I think that's the exact kind of game that can go into Fayetteville and give the Hogs trouble. I'm real high on the Hogs and KJ Jefferson. Rocket Sanders is out in that game, isn't he?
Yeah, Rockets got off to a slow start, and yeah, he's doubtful.
That's tough. So that's I mean, if they can go into Fayetteville and win a game like that, then I mean, the sky's the limit. I think for this program going to the Big 12, but I can also see a situation where KJ Jefferson just lights them up, finds the vulnerabilities in that defense that haven't quite gotten it exposed yet. But that's a huge game, and I think that'll tell us a lot about where this BYU team is here.
Yeah. And then, and then I think just to kind of to round that out, I mean, Oklahoma State should still be in good, not great. I know there's some question marks, but I don't view them. I mean, they did beat a Power 5 team on the road by 12, so give them, credit where it's due, even if Arizona State's kind of in a sheer rebuild. I put them there. You might disagree, but they're an interesting team. There's no other way to put that.
Interesting for sure, and I think as the season goes on and they get their quarterback situation filled out and a little bit more continuity, I think they'll look a lot better. They do look pretty yucky, I'd say, to start off the season, and I would argue that I Baylor losing to Utah in the way that they did, like you mentioned, they kind of had they looked like the better team for most of that game with the backup quarterback. So they would almost get that benefit of the doubt to me. If I'm just going strictly on what I've seen this year, and not like any expectations, not anything that I had kind of coming into this season. If I had no idea what these teams look like, I would put Iowa State in this tier. They looked really good against Northern Iowa. They lost by a touchdown to evidently a top 25 team in Iowa. I wouldn't have put them there, but that's why they don't give me an AP vote. But they looked good, and we talked about them on upset alert against UNI. They rolled in that game. And, I certainly think that they have some questions to answer still, but I think they've exceeded my expectations so far this season. I might even argue that they belong in this good, not great tier.
Yeah, they're on the edge for me because based on their defense, their defense would have me have their eyes on Arlington. I think their defense is solid. I mean, they have some good players. They're able to do some good stuff. That offense, though, is just straight yuck. There's just right now it is, and not that they can't improve. They're on the edge for me. I'll default. I'm happy to put them in good, not great. I'm willing to agree with you there. And Baylor's interesting too because it's wild. You could make an argument Baylor is the better team at 0-2 than, as you mentioned, Okie State at 2-0. But that said, Okie State wins. Baylor hasn't. So that's why I'm willing to give them that benefit of the doubt for now, even though, the train could go off the tracks come Big 12 play. And that's ultimately what we're trying to debate right now.
Tell you what, Drew Russell. Sell this the old-fashioned way.
Flip it. There we go.
That's it. You went first in your dissertation for Oklahoma State, so I'll give you heads. Iowa State right. Tails.
Sounds like let's flip it. Let's go. Here we go. Tails. Let's go.
Oklahoma State.
Okay. There we go. Simple as that. I love those photos on that Google search too of how to properly flip a coin.
I mean, really,
love that angle.
It's it shows real technical.
I feel like you got to get those Amazon, how you see those NFL commercials where they have those next gen stats and all that. I feel like you could definitely get some next gen stats on how to flip a coin personally. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to make clear too, the day that we can get Brandon Shanahan an AP top 25 vote for the Cornhusker connection is a day that I personally would weep in happiness.
I mean, that's the long-term goal. Just give me a vote on something. It doesn't even have to be the AP. It doesn't have to be the Heisman. Just give me a vote for the Remington Award. I'm a Husker fan. I could learn what makes a center good.
I say we should have a national public vote of the bottom 10 teams in the country just to motivate those teams a little bit more.
Absolutely.
I think, you and I would be perfect for that. I would watch some really ugly college football just to get to the bottom of that.
It's as good as it gets. I think that's true college football.
Yeah.
But as far as these teams go, I feel very good about having Houston and West Virginia on this tier. If Houston had a strong performance last week against Rice, I had a lot of high hopes for Houston coming into the season. AAC championship game just 2 years ago. Obviously ran into that playoff team in Cincinnati. And still at 8 wins in probably the best, deepest Group of 5 conference last year. I was kind of had some better hopes for them. West Virginia has not looked great.
No. But I'll tell you, but they took care of their business. And hey, for Coach Brown, he knows that seat is very warm. You know what's going to make it less warm? The Riot Bowl is this week, the Backyard Brawl, and it is something that is absolutely special between Pittsburgh and West Virginia. That is in Morgantown. Morgantown, I miss their kind of connections on the East Coast because that's a great college town, and we're going to see it in its full glory on Saturday.
No kidding. That's going to be a great game. Pittsburgh coming off a tough loss against Cincinnati. I think they're dialed in. I think just in the same way that you saw Baylor and Texas Tech probably play those Pac-12 contenders a little bit closer than I think that the line was going in. Watch out for Pittsburgh on the road.
Yeah, definitely. But West Virginia, I guarantee they'll play their most spirited game of the season Saturday. I feel really comfortable saying that.
Without a doubt. And like you said, Coach Brown could literally be coaching for his job at that point.
He could be. No, you lose ugly in that game. Hey, West Virginia's famous for burning their couches. It's a tradition unlike any other. Forget the Masters. We don't care about the Masters.
No,
it's about
right.
West Virginia burning couches, win or lose. Bad for the environment. Who cares? It's about sending a message. And you have to, they're going to see. That's just a hated rivalry, though. Those are the type of rivalries that make this sport wonderful. So it should be a great, great atmosphere.
So I got to say, looking at this tier list as a whole, I kind of dig it. I think we got it right. That final spot in the good, not great tier is tough. But
yeah, we'll look at. I mean, this is an ever changing deal. Like, I might be getting too aggressive putting Kansas at eyes on Arlington. I mean, Illinois might not be anything special. It's just offensively they do look great, and if they can get a defense to wrap around, they could compete. Central Florida's a team I'll keep an eye on too because they're not bad. They've got some positive stuff going on with that program, and I feel like Iowa State and Baylor at Yuck, they both can exit that tier, I think, relatively easily, but they're going to have some defining wins going forward in the coming weeks, and they'll get those opportunities.
Yeah, and I think really that the exercise here is that top of the conference. Who's going to win the conference? Who can win the conference? Who should win the conference? Who, in a dark horse kind of situation can cause some trouble, get to Arlington. And I think we got that right. I think Texas obviously they have the talents. It seems like they're putting it together enough to really to where it's their conference to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma, obviously a lot of talent as well. Brent Venables building that program up. Also, real quick, did you see that they had Art Briles on the field in that Oklahoma game?
I did see that. Well, his son-in-law had connections, I believe, with OU.
Yeah, their offensive coordinator.
Yeah, so Art was, I didn't recognize him.
Me neither.
I really did. I was like, that's Art Briles. Holy cow. He looks a lot different than when he was rolling around putting up 50, 60 a game at Baylor.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how quickly being the face of disgraceful conduct in college football will age you.
It is. He's a man that was part of the game, and not necessarily for the good reasons at the very end. But hey, his family lives on. I mean, he's got his son-in-law at OU. He's got his son, actual son at TCU. And so, hey, just because he's out doesn't mean the family tradition can't continue on for generation after generation.
That's a great tradition to pass down from generation to generation. I'm glad to see the Briles families thriving.
Hey, who isn't? I mean, just nothing but morals and honesty coming from Art himself. So, and still a wild deal. Baylor, I still think kind of got off a little too easy, in my opinion, on that, but to each their own.
Yeah, absolutely. But as we kind of look back on the last week here, finally some separation as far as our season-long prediction standings go. Pulled away with a 21-7 record. We basically had a lot of the same ones. Obviously, one of us was going to get one. Going different directions in Cincinnati and Pittsburgh. You went Pittsburgh. I stayed faithful to the conference we love so dearly here. But even the rest of our losses, Iowa State, Alabama, Houston, I mean, those are ones. I mean, obviously Houston, I might want back seeing them, but I stand by the rest of those.
Yeah, I don't really regret anything. Cincinnati's a lot better than I thought they were, and so you live and you learn on that. And Houston, though, really, boy, they have got some things they've got to figure out, and they'll get a chance again in this upcoming week against TCU. But definitely a situation they're going to have to find a way. But yeah, just looking at Cross, I mean, I'd say we did relatively well. I don't really regret any of my picks. Sometimes things just don't fall the right way.
There's a lot of ways that things could fall. Sometimes just not the right way, just like you said, this way or the wrong way, the right way. Lots of different ways it could go.
Yeah, well, a lot of uncertainty out there. So definitely something you can count on for sure.
Absolutely, but you know what they say: good times or bad times don't last, but tough people do. Tough times don't
Ah,
last, but tough people do. So I think we're ready for a good bounce back week. I'm waiting for one of these weeks where we just clean house and one of us
yeah.
gets it. I think week 3 is a good one. I think there's honestly a lot of a lot of snuff going out there
Mhm.
in week 3 here, and I think we see that with where the networks are going. They're in Boulder for Colorado State, two teams that won a combined 2 games last year. So outstanding stuff there. But overall, I think this is going to give us a good opportunity to really feast before we get into to Big 12 play, getting fully underway here in week 4.
We need to be like Jameis Winston. We need to eat some W's.
Absolutely.
That's again another king of morality right there is our beloved Jameis. So we need to get some W's.
Without a doubt, if either of us can get to 30 wins before conference play really gets underway next week, I think we're in good shape.
I agree, and there's definitely some winnable games aboard this week that could be a lot of fun, not just here, but also on your local wagering site as well. I think there's a lot of wins across the board.
And first one, I'm excited for this one just because the nostalgia of it. I don't think it's going to be a very competitive football game by any means, but
Mhm.
boy, Big 12 football back in the way that we grew up, Kansas State, Missouri. I think Kansas State takes care of business here pretty easy. I think
I
that,
do too.
yeah,
Yeah, in fact, Mizzou's kind of in an interesting spot right now. Eli Drinkwitz, their coach, boy, Mizzou's fan base is always funny to me because they're very critical and they'll turn on you quick. This guy was the toast of town like just a year ago, and now they're 2-0 and they want this dude gone. Like they think he's a fraud, all this. So I don't know. K State on paper should win this game, but hey, in Columbia, there have been a few weird things that have happened up there at times.
yeah. If you're going to try to save your job, this is a winnable game for you at home against a rival. Crazy things happen, and
Yeah.
it wouldn't. It also kind of feels like even when Kansas State's good, even last year losing to Tulane, they kind of lose a dumb game here and there, one that they probably shouldn't have.
Yeah.
They go up 21 points against TCU on the road and find a way to fumble that game. So I think that there's definitely upset potential here, but I like the Cats. I'm trying to rack up wins. I'm not going to be too bold here.
No, and nor should you. And MU just they don't have the quarterback play. They've got good players on their team, but they just don't seem to have enough to keep up with a K-State team that is just so well coached and has great depth across every skill position.
Another game I'm not going to be too bold on, Iowa State and Ohio. It is interesting that they're going to Ohio.
This is an interesting game. I mean it. Like Iowa State's only a 2-point favorite. So this is not going to be an
Really?
easy
2 points?
only two.
Man, maybe I don't feel as bold here. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm going to pick Iowa State just because they need to win, and I'm going to believe in them and say they're going to find a way. But they've played some MAC schools in the past, and they've had some difficulties on the road. So I'm hoping we can kind of buck that trend. But in Rocco, I trust. Defense, I think, will find a way to kind of slow down Ohio throughout the day. But this is not a gimme. This is a tough little test for Iowa State, and I think it's a game that will be one possession.
interesting. Because I'm looking at this game for Iowa State, and we talk about the non-conference slate and how a team like Iowa State needs to kind of feast, and they kind of have to feast on some W's here, as our Lord and Savior Jameis Winston puts it. And Ohio is a game. If you do want to make a bowl game, if you do want to get some cool down the seat a little bit, this is one that you got to win. I think they're going to be dialed in. Tough road test, first road game of the season. Slow start for sure on the table, but I think if they can get out and at least be productive early on, I think this is the one that they can pull out here.
Yeah, they've got to get out to a quick start. And that's a cliche thing to say, but half true. I mean, Ohio's not bad, 2-1. They've been competitive in all their games. So Iowa State can't mess around. Otherwise, there could be even more questions after going to Athens.
And I think this one's kind of the same boat as far as the talent's probably not a huge gap. Baylor's still without Blake Shapen, so I don't think that's nothing here. But I also think that they look at their schedule and be like, well, we can't be 0-3.
Yeah.
0-3 can't be an option. I think they figure it out against Liberty here.
Oh, yeah. No, I have full confidence against for Baylor in this game as they take on a Long Island University. I had to go check that one quick.
I was just looking that up. I'm like, why would they put LI for Liberty?
Yeah, no,
but
Long Island University.
Long Island. I feel a lot better about it now.
Yeah. So, do you know the mascot of Long Island?
I do not.
They are the Sharks, which is it's a great name, actually.
I mean,
I got Baylor, and I think Baylor they'll nurse a few wounds back to health this week. So I think that's my lock of the week. And if Long Island wins that one, I've got some splaining to do next week.
I mean, Baylor's got some splaining to do next week. They dropped 0-3 against.
Yeah.
Reminds me of college football. They always have those generic schools because they never got the licensing for FCS. That the Tiburon Sharks were always one of them. So that, I mean, weird memory down the vault there, but the Sharks, huh?
The Sharks, yeah. No, their mascot's kind of cool. It's a shark. That's all it is. So it looks like it's a dancing shark almost. So I didn't know that Long Island actually had a college football team. That's kind of news to me. So Baylor better take care of business.
No kidding. I do got to say here, I like the blue and yellow.
Yeah, it's a good color. Like, I think it's a good color scheme. It really is. Like, Northeast isn't really known for being kind of college football-esque, but I mean, it does work. I think that's a really nice. They're going to look good. Doesn't mean they're going to play very well, but
yeah,
you have to respect it.
I also wonder what Baylor's going to be wearing here. They got some really good uniforms. They also got some really bad uniforms. So it could be a legendary.
Make sure you flip the coin before Saturday. And
absolutely.
You just let me know if they're going to wear good or bad uniforms.
Oklahoma, Tulsa. These next few games, I don't feel too strongly about trying to create a whole lot of controversy. I like Oklahoma big. I like UCF big. I like Oklahoma State big. And I like Cincinnati big.
I would agree with all four of those assessments. Oklahoma looks to keep things going. In Tulsa, in the past, they've had some decent teams, but this year is not one of them. So UCF, another opportunity just to get going and keep that ball rolling. Okie State should take care of business against South Alabama. And Cincinnati coming a little bit of a darling for me. Miami of Ohio is probably the most competitive out of those four teams. I think they could put together a little bit of a run, but Cincy at home, no question. Get your Skyline chili before the game and after the game, and you'll feel that for a couple days. So easy call right there.
Yeah, Cincinnati is not an easy place to play. And as far as Oklahoma goes, I think if they were going to stumble, it would have been against SMU. I think they kind of roll here. Also, whether they're going to Tulsa, that's a weird non-conference game that I don't know how they convince them to play this one, and unless they play every year and I just don't pay attention to it.
Yeah, pretty interesting that they were able to put that together, but that's college football scheduling. You never know. Sometimes some schools just want straight money and they'll say, we'll come to you every year and lose. Other schools will say, we'll do a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 deal, and this might be the one for them.
Yeah, it feels like maybe a athletic director lost a poker bet or something in Norman. I don't know.
I'll tell you, those poker games down in Oklahoma, look out. You could lose a lot of Texas steer quickly.
There you go. The next one, I do think we do actually have a couple of really good games down the stretch here.
Yeah.
I'll get this one kind of out of the way. Nevada and Kansas. I think Nevada is one of the worst teams in college football. I think that the Kansas is going to take care of this one pretty handedly.
Yeah, Kansas definitely should take care of business here and look for the good times to keep on rolling for KU. They're looking to get to another 3-0 start, which hard to believe just how far they've come in the last couple of years, where a lot of people said this is impossible. And Lance Leipold, not even phased. He continues to keep that engine churning. Unfortunately for KU and for Lance Leipold, there's been some developments in other conferences this week regarding their coaches and some misconduct, and I've seen his name kind of come up a couple times. So I'd like to say, I hope he stays at Kansas. He is a Midwest guy through and through, but something to keep an eye on, not just for him, but for other coaches down the road.
Tough to pass up a vacation home on the Great Lakes up there.
You ever been up there?
I have not.
I haven't either. It looks great up there. I'll tell you what, this podcast, like next July, we can write a few things off maybe. And then I say we go find something up in like upper Michigan. We'll go hang out with the retirement crowd. We're going to go have a good time. That just sounds like something this podcast has to do.
Do a whole Big 12 tour. And you know what? If Lance Leipold is coaching another school next year, we'll give them an honorary badge and we'll make sure to go visit.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. That's what we're going to say. They're going to say, why is the Big 12 here in Michigan? And we'll say, why isn't it here is the bigger question.
Absolutely. But next one, we kind of hinted at this earlier, probably the most competitive games, probably the biggest stakes that I'm looking at here. Of course, ECU and Houston, a conference game, but Pittsburgh and West Virginia, both of those teams desperate for a win. Neil Brown might literally be coaching for his job here. In Morgantown, that's not an easy place to play. This is an electric matchup. Who do you got, Drew Russell?
This is a great matchup. This is the game I'm really looking forward to this week, just because the energy is going to be there. I got West Virginia. I'm going to say they find a way. I think Pitt actually is the better team, but it just feels like a game. They're just going to ride that emotion. They're going to get a couple big turnovers, a couple big plays. They got good players on that team. They just got to find a way to get it to gel together. This is a huge opportunity. If they can find a way to beat Pitt, a Pitt team that's down right now after Cincinnati played a great game last week, but Pitt didn't play too well. They had very poor QB play last week. So I don't know if they're going to find a way to correct that, especially in a hostile environment. So I've got West Virginia.
You know, I was kind of hoping to fade you one way here or the other just to get some type of clarity. But I did like Pitt going into this week. I think that they're a little bit better than they looked last week against Cincinnati. And that's a tough team to lose to. A lot of stakes on the line, going 1-2 in non-conference plays. It's going to be a tough look for a team that probably internally wanted to get into the thick of things in the ACC for a title race. And this is one that I think sets the tone for that. And I think that they do pick up the win on the road here. Give me the Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting. I think for sure. It's a tough call, but I respect it because I agree. Like in terms of, I think talent, I think Pittsburgh's the better team. But I don't know. I don't have enough faith personally in their offense to find a way to get done. I think it'll be low scoring, but it's going to be. I'll tell you what, they're going to need those mute buttons ready for the broadcast because there is going to be a lot of. Let's go not kid-friendly language going to be used out of the student section. Not even that, just the old alum, I feel, is going to really bring it.
Absolutely. They're hungry for a win. And I'll also refer to you here as our local SEC West expert and in Arkansas here, BYU Arkansas. We talked about this a little bit when when debating BYU and how big of a game this is to just kind of get themselves settled into the Power Five. It doesn't get as Power Five as the SEC here. How do you think this game ends up? Night game in Fayetteville.
Yeah, Fayette Nam will be in full display, of course. Can't be beat at night. BYU's got a shot. They really do. And they have a QB that, again, has a decent track record in Caden Slovis. So we haven't talked really at all about Caden Slovis through the first couple podcast episodes. But this is a young man that can, he has that ability to make plays. Arkansas, though, has a guy named KJ Jefferson that is just a straight beast. He is going to go down as one of the best QBs ever at Arkansas when everything is said and done. And I just think they're going to be just a little bit too much for BYU, but BYU can compete in this game. There's no reason that this should not be close for them in the fourth quarter. I'm a biased guy. I love my Hogs, and I'm going to go Arkansas, but BYU, their defense has the ability to keep them in it. If they can find a way to force a couple of turnovers, and if Slovis can be as efficient as he was last week, this is a team that could do some damage, but I've got Arkansas personally.
For some reason, I see this game kind of playing out to Arkansas gets into a rhythm early, gets something like a 10-0 lead, and I could see that really throwing BYU off their game. If they're going to be in it, it's going to be because it's a long, drawn-out game. Both teams' running games are clicking. No Rocket Sanders for Arkansas, which is a huge loss. But for some reason, I think Arkansas gets off to an early start. And then I think that at that time, they can start focusing on their powerful run game, and BYU has to play catch-up, rely on Keaton Slovis to air it out a little bit more, which he hasn't had to do a whole lot of this year. Just 4 touchdowns and 1 interception so far, less than 500 yards through 2 games. I think if he has to carry the team, I think they're in trouble. So give me the Hogs as well.
Yeah, and that's going to be the key. Now, BYU can find a way to jump out quickly. Again, it's a cliche of, hey, you jump out, get off to a good start, you're going to give yourself a better chance to win. That's obvious. But, boy, it's important for BYU in terms of just the style they play. And if they can get a little 7 to 14 point cushion, say, hey, defense, go make some plays, put Arkansas in some third and long situations. They have a decent little pass rush, and Arkansas did not look good in protection last week. So there are opportunities for BYU. And again, they're used to playing high-level competition just through their independent status throughout the years. So they're not going to be afraid even remotely, and weren't last year, and they'll be ready to go. It'll just be, can they keep up with Arkansas long-term?
And if I were to sell us on BYU, other than the exact game plan that you just threw out there, the SEC hasn't looked very good at all. So this could be another opportunity for the SEC to get exposed. It could also show that Arkansas is able to, withstand this the step back that the conference has taken.
Hey,
With the way that Alabama looked, who knows? Maybe Arkansas is going to Atlanta at the end of the year. Wouldn't that be something?
Wow. This would become an SEC podcast for just 1 week. I'll tell you that right now. I can guarantee that. But yeah, again, BYU though, they got a chance. They got a chance, but they're going to have to execute in every facet.
Now, Wyoming has an opportunity to do the funniest thing in college football all season and beat Texas. Do they have a chance?
Well, everybody has a chance. I mean, I could go on that. I could go on the ESPN football predictor, and he'll give you its little wheel of, what those chances are. They don't have much of a chance, but they are 2-0. They do have the tendency to compete. They did just beat a Big 12 team just a couple weeks ago, so just remember that. I'd be pretty nuts to pick Wyoming, and I don't feel like getting nuts for this particular reason. So I've got Texas personally, but I don't think they'll be as. Oh, there we go. Okay, there's my 2% wheel.
Chance.
So there's your. Right. So there you go. So you're telling me there's a chance, and there's a 3%, Brandon. I mean, that's, you might as well just bet on one at the blackjack or at the roulette wheel.
There you go.
Get the 0-0. That's about what it is there. Why not? You can win some big cash. I got Texas, but I'm curious if they'll be as strong as they were last week, or if they'll have a little bit of a lull as after kind of a high in that win over Alabama.
And that's the first thing that come to my mind is that this is, could be a potentially program changing victory going on the road against Alabama. And I think under previous regimes, they're certainly due for a letdown, whether it's such a big letdown that they fall to Wyoming, or if it's just closer than it should be. But I think this team's dialed in. I think they're focused. I think they're exactly where they thought they would be, which is a dangerous place for a team as talented as that. And I think that they kind of keep that, it's a crazy sport. It's easy to go through peaks and valleys. They can just kind of maintain the ride there. Then I think that's what makes this team really dangerous. And I think that they keep cruising here.
I do too, but we'll see. And that defense needs to keep taking steps as well. Like, we put them as a national title contender, rightfully so, but they need to make sure that they're taking positive steps towards that.
And our final game, and I say for us, it's a conference game.
Mm-hmm.
TCU and Houston. In Houston, it's not a crazy place to it's not a stale environment, is what I'm getting at here. Houston, first Big 12 game ever in state. TCU defending national runner-ups. That still got some weight to it, despite their early struggle against Colorado. Where are you leaning here? Is the home field advantage?
I'm tempted to say that those waves of Houston are going to find a way. And if they had beat Rice last week, they find a way in OT to do it, I would have picked Houston. I would say let's ride those waves of momentum. They didn't. TCU was sharp, granted against a lesser foe last week, but they did do their damage. And I'm going to stay generic. I'm going to say this is a team that did make the national title game last year, and I think still has some juice the tires. I think they'll come in sharp. It's not exactly a team they like either, I'd say, even though they haven't played regularly in a long time. There's still history there, and anytime you take on a team within your own state, there's going to be some kind of animosity there, and I think that doesn't change here. So I got TCU. Kind of an interesting game for Houston, though, because if TCU takes it to them, Houston, they could be in the cellar all season.
You're absolutely right. I think this is a great opportunity for Houston to get their Big 12 status and to really get their Big 12 membership card. But I'm with you. There's a lot more that I like with TCU than I like with Houston. If Dana Holgerson's gonna really build momentum with this team and kind of establish them as a true Power 5 team, this is a game you got to win. But like you mentioned, if they had taken care of business against Rice last year, maybe it's a different story, or last week. But I got to see it first, and I'm not gonna pick the huge upset here. It's probably not huge. I don't know what the points are, but still the likely upset there. Give me the Frogs. Figured out some stuff against Nicholls State, I think, defensively, and I think Chandler Morris took a big step as well. So I think they're in good shape.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But this kind of a fun first game of the Big 12 season, and this board is going to look a lot smaller, really, after this week once we get some actual conference games, and we'll be really digging. We dig deep already, but really digging deeper into those matchups, especially we get fewer games across the board. But yeah, this week's kind of that last week where we're not going to see those regular, conference matchups get a little more non-con, because starting next week or the week after, here we go, baby. We're going to be all in on the Big 12, but big opportunities for all these teams to tune up, and we'll see if they're able to do it. We're pretty, in general in this sheet, pretty Big 12 healthy this week. But usually, we'll see how they do. I don't know yet. We're going to find out.
Absolutely. Celebrities, do they know things? Let's find out.
Imagine if BoJack Horseman covered college football.
Oh my gosh.
Imagine. That could be the content would be off the rails of that opportunity. Vincent Adultman as a sideline reporter. Just feed me it now. Just feed me it. Golly, that'd be just incredible.
Outstanding coverage there from the Bojack team. Bojack would be the only person in the country having SMU be in the college football playoff.
Guaranteed. Yeah, guaranteed. He'd have SMU in there, and I don't know. I don't know who he'd throw in for another one. If anything that's horse-like, he is a horseman. So
He is in fact a horseman. That you
yeah,
can chalk that up. Well, perfect, Drew Russell. I think we got a good slate here. I think, as you said, Big 12 play is going to really tighten things up on the margins. I feel pretty good about going favorite heavy here. Lots of tune-up games, a lot of get-right games for teams like Baylor and Texas Tech. Next, Texas Tech doesn't even play this week. Never mind. A tune-up, get-right game for Baylor. And then some bright lights there for teams like BYU and Houston. Which of these games are you most looking forward to watching?
well, I mean, West Virginia Pittsburgh is just fun for me, just in terms of that backyard brawl. I think just energy is going to be great. You'll watch that, and after all the offseason chaos of college football, hey, we've played a couple weeks, and for the most part, everybody's talking about the product on the field, and rightfully so, because it's been entertaining so far through 2 weeks. Arkansas BYU is another interesting game as well, just because, Arkansas, I follow them, but not just that, BYU is an intriguing team, and I think has a chance to make kind of a statement there. So that's, I think, the other one. And I think that third one for me, just because it's an old school Big 12 matchup, and these are two teams that fascinate me. K-State Mizzou is interesting because, if K-State loses, they're going to be absolutely furious if they can't find a way to beat kind of a very average at best and probably below average team in Mizzou. Mizzou loses, hey, they're going to have some fun little conversations in Columbia, at least amongst the fan base going forward. So those are three that stand out. And that said, I mean, the conference matchup's great too. So I think we do have a good slate.
Yeah, I would just add the TCU Houston game. When you look at, the Big 12's losing Oklahoma, they're losing Texas. I think we're getting a lot of good matchups going forward, and the college football sicko in me loves TCU and Houston, and thinks this is going to be a great college game here going forward. Whether it is this year or not, I don't know. But I think that this is the perfect kind of regionality that college football is going to need here. So I'm pretty juiced for that.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. I just can't wait. And, and again, even to our future Big 12 members, I mean, Colorado is the talk of the nation right now. Through 2 weeks, everybody wants to get on the Colorado train. They're going to get their ESPN Pac-12 after dark game Saturday night, and they're going to be a lot of fun going forward. Utah, future member, they get their win at Baylor last week. They're going to continue to compete well. And the two Arizona schools, we'll see what they do going forward. So a great time for the conference, great time for college football, even in a time of change and uncertainty. But you have to hand it to them that entertainment's off the rails. And as the great Pete Weber of PBA, Professional Bowling Association, said, who do you think who do you think you are? I am. Hey, you might not like me, but you watched, and I'll tell you what, I'm watching right now. I might not love where college football as a whole is going, but guess what? The entertainment's there, and I watched, and I'm going to watch again this weekend.
Absolutely. I mean, what a callback to